Welcome to Makers International, a podcast of makers, connecting with makers from all around the world. Here's your hosts, Jamie Page, Chris Cute, and now, Richard Morley.
Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good times, whatever time it is, wherever you're listening. Joined with me, as always, Mr. Chris Cute.
How you doing?
And Mr. Jamie Page.
Got to be done. All right, Amia.
We'll get on to the live shout-outs in just a second, Jamie, because we've also got with us Kat, my better half, Hippynoodle. Hi, Kat.
Hi.
This will be interesting. We thought that Jamie wouldn't be here tonight. I thought Chris wouldn't be here tonight. So I thought I'd better get Kat in to save us because I couldn't do a show on my own. And obviously you want to listen to the show. So Kat's here to save us because we're
also the better half of Team Scroll Saw.
Hey.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. Hashtag didn't think it through.
The scroll saw thing, you wouldn't understand.
Don't
There
want
you
to
go.
understand. Anyway, so very quickly, the normal shout outs and thank yous to those people in the live chat. If you're in the live chat, be prepared because we've got, and as I zip down the list, randomly some regulars and some non-regulars by the looks of things. So Andy Pugh, Steve Coombs, Kareem Hussain, Doug from Pole Barn Productions, Anna B. I said that one, and I know Joe's in the house because Jamie's already mentioned it. There probably are others. Welcome to you all. Thanks for joining us. We do wonder why sometimes, but let's not question it. As always, tonight's show is brought to you in part that Chris has just left. He's like that. He's got bored and gone. He's done one. So Kat's here to save us. We'll be fine. In part by Yorkshire Grit, our good friend Chad over at Mancrafting, and Pam from Highland Boxes. Anyone watching me look down all the time? I am watching.
And Steve Nealon from Highland Media.
He's on the list. I had to scroll, Jamie. Yes, Steve as well. That helps us. Well, I think basically we worked out last week that Steve runs the website, and Jamie's just been taking credit for it. So if you want to find out about the sponsors and our website, then head on over to the website, makersinternational.com/sponsors, and either Steve or Jamie or both, probably just Steve, keep that up to date, don't they, Jamie?
Yep.
Yeah, he's busted. He's with a right hump now because he's been busted for all that work. But what, Chris? You're back, Chris. Thank goodness for that. I was going to have a little panic then. Chris, do we have a random listener question from Andy Pugh? I mean, the week.
That's funny you said that. No, Andy Pugh isn't our questioner tonight. And I'm sorry, I forgot to start the show with my normal, because I think people would be disappointed in me if I didn't have that.
I'd have been disappointed if you hadn't come back, but
well, no, okay. Well, here I am. I do have a question tonight, and this was actually asked to us a long time ago, and I just found it in one of our files that I keep on my computer, and I don't know who asked it, and it's quite involved. So this is going to require the people who are listening to pay close attention because I don't know how to break this down any better than. Well, I guess we'll get into it. Anyway, the question is this. Even outside of the woodworking community, questions about should automobiles be repaired using socket sets and timing lights or by computer diagnostic machines? And then in the maker community, things like, should you use traditional tools or carbide tools when wood turning? Should you use a chisel carving set or a computer numerical control, CNC? Questions like that, this person is assuming, questions like that seem to be asked with the intent of finding out if your work in the questioner's eyes should be respected or not. Now, do you agree with the premise? The question continues. Do you agree with the premises of these type of questions in that respect, meaning that somebody is trying to judge you, or would you just have a contrary view of them, meaning that no such assumption should be implied if you are asked a question of that type? And that's kind of a deep question. It's basically what he's saying is, people who are opposed to today's technology and refuse to give it any respect, do you automatically assume questions like that are along those lines, or would you just assume that the person is just inquisitive, I guess is the question. It's the whole old school versus new school kind of thought. And this person is assuming that when questions like that are asked, that they're assuming somebody is an old schooler who wants to know if they want to respect today's technology or not when they ask you how you make it. So I don't, how do you guys approach questions like that? Or have you ever had any, I guess is the question.
Well, we were sort of talking about this a little bit before we came on, and Kat, because if anyone doesn't know Kat or recognize Kat, you knit, you crochet, you dressmake, you quilt, anything with fabric, yarn, paint. Kat makes loads of stuff and always has. You had some really good topics on the sort of the knitting side, didn't you, with that?
Yeah. So someone has approached me and asked me, okay, did you make that on knitting needles or did you make that with a knitting machine? So am I assuming that they're going to judge me if I say it was a knitting machine and have less value to my work? I don't think I would assume that. I think that I would take it on face value at the beginning. Maybe they use a knitting machine themselves and they're interested in swapping techniques. I think I'd wait until further down the conversation before I decided if they were trying to judge me or not. The question of whether something is still worthy because it's made on a machine does come up in the world of sort of yarny type crafts. I mean, there is a sort of often debates in craft groups. Okay, if you've knitted something on a machine, is it still handmade? Not in the same way that it is when it's made with knitting needles, but it doesn't mean it has any less value. So I think my answer to that question is I wouldn't necessarily assume I was being judged at that point. I think I'd wait and see where it went after that.
Well, I would see, because I don't do it as a merchandiser. I don't do this commercially. What I do it as a hobby. So my initial impression to that question was, and I jotted it down, and you can tell me if I'm off base here or not. I just basically said, I don't see what business it is of anyone other than myself or yourself when it comes down to what you do. The point is the results speak for themselves. And As a hobbyist, did I have fun doing it or did I not? I don't set myself up to those kind of judgmental standards. Because I don't ascribe to have them. I don't care if you respect what I do or not. It's there for you to look at and enjoy if you would like. If you don't, that's fine too. I mean, I just don't, but I'm not doing it commercially. If I was doing it commercially, then what the public thought would matter a great deal to me, because I have to sell this. I don't have to sell what I'm doing in order to appreciate what I do.
I'm not sure the public care in that way. I mean, if I'm trying to sell a jumper, it's going to keep you just as warm as one that's made on a machine as one that's made on knitting needles.
Yeah.
Maybe it's got less hours of work in it, but from a consumer's point of view, I don't think many people would really care all that much. I think it's other crafters that maybe have a vested interest.
There's the point. And I think that's probably the absolute point. The only people who truly care about how it was made were the people who also make things along those lines. Yeah. The general public doesn't give to, but the person that might be involved in woodworking, metalworking, knitting, whatever the case may be, that is where I guess this is maybe the wrong term, maybe a little harsh, but that's where the snobbery starts coming in. As to how you went about doing it, as to whether you're going to be respected. And maybe that might even be the premise of what this question is all about. I don't know. It was asked so long ago. I don't remember the conversation I had at the time, but interesting perspective.
Tools are tools, mate. They all get the same result.
But yeah, exactly. I mean, going back to the very specifics of
put that on a t-shirt.
When you said, Chris, should you use, and then you said traditional tools, cardboard tools, there was the car mechanic stuff for the socket sets, or should you use CNC? Personally, I think you should use the tools you have available that you want to learn or that you enjoy the most.
The question wasn't which method has more merit, but more how do you feel when someone questions your methods?
Yeah, so if you're using whichever tool it is, and the socket set or the hand tools or the CNC, whatever it is, if for me personally, if you're doing that and somebody asks a question, like you said, you've got to gauge. I think it's a case of gauging what the other person's trying to do. Do you remember when we went to the show that Rutland, the craft and wine fair? There was a chap there. He was selling, or him and his other half, wife, partner, whatever, whoever she was. It was a couple, male and female couple, and they were selling metal pictures, cutouts, silhouettes, shapes. So there was like if you can imagine the silhouette of a pack of like 4 horses pulling an old plough with the guy, you know, that sort of silhouette image, or the silhouette of a mat or a squirrel on a tree trunk or whatever it was. It was all sort of naturey, and there was a lot of aircraft there and like traditional shapes. And I asked the guy, I said, you know, how are they made? And he said, oh, they're all handmade in wherever it was they were from. And what I meant was, are they plasma cut? Are they laser cut? Are they milled? You know, what computer machine are you using to cut them out? And because he didn't realize that I made stuff because it hadn't come up. Right. And I just assumed that he'd answer it with, oh, they're plasma cut or they're cut out with a laser, not they're handmade in such and such. And I questioned it. And he then was on the back foot. And I realized that he was on the back foot because he was like, yeah, actually, they're not handmade, are they? They're not, you know, you don't cut them out. And he's like, well, no, they're done with a computer. And I was like, that's fine. You know, are they plasma or are they? And then we got into a conversation. It was quite a good conversation, actually, because the business was, he owned a big plasma cutter, CNC plasma, doing other things, but his other half was the one that did all the imagery. And because, you know, you can't just take a picture, download it, plug it into the machine and plasma cut it out. There's a lot of work and a lot of skill and a lot of talent which goes into making that picture doable. I mean, Jamie, you can probably vouch for this. You can't just take a photograph of somebody and then it's instantly a scroll sawable portrait.
No, I'll send it to Charles Deering.
Yeah, so but okay, so but you appreciate that you can't just take a photo and you can cut it out. You have to. There's a lot of process that Charles goes through and other people.
It could take hours.
So there's this sort of mystique now, and you know, if you are asking the question because you're like, well, I do cut mine out by hand with a coping saw rather than using a scroll saw machine or a computer or whatever. I think there's sometimes a little bit of jealousy, a little bit of, like you said, snobbery, a little bit of
and
misunderstanding, and also genuine intrigue. Like, well, how do you do it? You know, because we all like watching other people make things in their little world. There is a bit of intrigue as well. So it's...
Caitlin on the chat made a good point. She says, you know, there's kind of 2 different sets of people: those that want to see you succeed and those that want to find fault in what you're doing. And that's kind of true, I guess, in some respects. I mean, that's kind of a cynical attitude to have, but I mean, I understand it. But we talked about this before we went on the air, is if you get yourself into a craft show, and there's a bunch of booths around, and you've got a guy there selling hand-carved wooden signs. Okay, and this is a guy who uses a chisel set, and it takes him probably a day to carve a single sign. And then if you got another guy right next to him in a booth that uses a CNC that labels his work as hand-carved signs, that's where the dispute comes in, because the price of the guy who's spending a day to make that sign is going to be different from the guy who spent a half an hour to run a CNC. Because the value of the gentleman who's doing it by hand, if you care about what you make per hour, is going to be a lot higher than what the guy is who did it on a CNC. And so the dispute comes in where you start labeling things as the same, but they aren't quite the same. You follow me?
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about the carving and the CNC, and that one comes up a lot. I mean, to my mind, if you are hand carving a sign, you know, like a house number or a village name, and you're trying to sell it, you're missing a trick. because you should, if you're the sort of person that can hand carve that stuff, you should be doing the 3-dimensional stuff. You know, you should be carving busts.
But if they don't want to, Richard, I mean, it's not for us to tell them to do it a different way.
No. But if you're then expecting to, I don't think we should be jealous or critical of other people in our field who manage to make it more economical.
No, I hear you. Because like Kat mentioned earlier, the consumer isn't going to care.
Exactly.
But that's the problem. Because the consumer doesn't care, they could go up to the hand carved booth, see this sign. They go to the next booth and see the same exact sign. They may look very much alike. And the booth next to the hand carved guy could be selling the same work a lot cheaper and undercutting this guy's business. Now, if you just want to chalk that up to, hey, progress happens, I think that's a fair argument. But at the same time, I think it could be a little misleading to label something as being the same as something else when it is actually not. When the intention was to say this is a hand carved sign, to go to the next guy who didn't obviously hand carve it, but he did have the tools to do and replicate the same work. It's a matter of labeling, I think, is what we're talking about. And how you get away with what you can without criticism.
Yeah, I mean, if you're just doing it because you're having fun, then like nobody can. I mean, there was a classic one. I don't know if this has come up with you, Jamie. We'll get on to the fact that you've been demoing at the tool show this weekend. This week, when we were down at Yandles the other week, I was turning a pen, and I'm lazy. I'm quite happy to admit it. I'll do things the most efficient way as well. I basically turn a pen with just the roughing gouge. Yeah, don't use a spindle gouge. I don't use a skew. I don't use a scraper. I literally do it start to finish. And when I say start to finish, I mean a bit of sanding and then the finish with the roughing gouge. Because as long as it's sharp, you can kind of use the roughing gouge to rough it out as a scraper and a bit like a skew as well. If you're a bit delicate with it, you can get just as good a finish. And it just saves swapping all the tools. And the chap said to me, "Oh, well, why aren't you using a skew? You should be using a skew chisel on that. It will save you all the sanding." And my view is, well, nobody cares how.
And that's
nobody
true.
Cares how smooth it is between it being a square block of wood with a brass tube in it and it being a pen.
Right.
It's not even me because it's not relevant. Because it's, I don't care what color my car is before I've bought it. It's on the factory floor. It's totally irrelevant. When you step on the gas pedal, does it go? It should be done that way because that's how he does it. And there's that the skew argument, isn't it? Everyone's scared of it, but not if you can use a skew, then you're brilliant. Sort of an issue, but it doesn't. You get that you should do it the way you should do it this way. You should do it that way. And I don't know if Jamie, you've experienced that with your demoing.
Do you know, I didn't personally suffer with any critics at the demo, but however, I did see a few while I was up there, and so I was at one point, and then I had John Clother and Martin from MG Makes next to me, and just next to me, some of Martin had some of his display pieces next to me. Now it was none of the wood turners that were demoing there. I can't think of the name of the turning club, or some of the actual turners that were demoing there. But some of the visitors who happened to be turners turn up, and like one of the first things that they were doing were picking up the bowls, turning them upside down, and feeling the inside, seeing if there was a lump, and like you could hear them kind of whispering them amongst themselves, like. I mean, Martin's just going about his happy day and doing some turning, but you can hear them kind of whispering amongst themselves, and it's like the dude's just happy turning bowls. Just leave him alone.
So it goes back. It goes totally back to what Kat said initially. It's the crafters themselves that are the ones who are going to question your work, and so don't worry about it. And guys, we've spent enough time on this. I don't want to get into CNC versus whatever kind of conversation, because we've got Kat here tonight.
I don't want to say that I was criticizing anyway, but I did have a couple of guys, and I was like, "Oh, how you doing? You all right?" And they were kind of like, "Yeah, not my thing," and just kind of laughed at me and walked away. I was like, "Okay, must be router people."
There's always going to be some people that make themselves feel better by putting someone else down.
There you go. That's it.
And yeah, that's just the way of life. I mean,
or not even putting someone else down, just that, like with the bowl example, just picking the bowl up and just thinking I can do better than that. And
that's
then,
it. Yeah.
They don't necessarily have to say anything. But there's been a lot of interesting. Oh no, here we go. A lot of interesting things in the comments about CNC is not handmade. If you're doing that, if you're saying it is misrepresentation, then people saying the market's always going to dictate. But pretty much the general sentiment seems to be doing what you're doing and having fun. And actually, even I think if you're even in the commercial side of it, and I'd say the same with like the knitting or with even the scroll sawing.
Because if you're not enjoying your work, then
exactly. I know so many people that make things, and they make things for a living because they hated the jobs they were in. We all know people that hated that job. Why get into making things to then hate making them? It's just bonkers to me.
Makes no sense. Yeah, I hear you. Well, Richard, you had talking. Go ahead, Jimmy.
So Susie's mum says, and don't even get me started onto the traditional tool against carbide. Well, the answer is pretty simple there. You use traditional carbide.
do you ever? I mean, this kind of brings what you were talking about, where we were going to take the conversation about having sort of self-doubt and things. Do you ever have self-doubt when you're demoing or when you're using those, modern scrapers tool things that you use?
Of course he doesn't. He's Jamie Page.
Jamie,
no.
Even if somebody's sort of criticizing your demos or your work, do you ever get in that?
No.
Chris.
Well, no, and that because we know Jamie, I understand that. I mean, it's like he doesn't care. I mean, Jamie's a lot like me. He just doesn't care. I mean, it's like if you, I hear you. But
I could wear a massive costume that looks like a big middle finger.
I thought you were.
But there are people out there, and I've heard this, and Richard and Jamie and Kat, I'm sure you guys have heard it too, that, they don't want to put their, and I'll just take it in the general sense that since we're on YouTube, let's do it. I don't want to put my work out there because I don't think it's good enough. There are people out there who judge themselves and don't want to expose themselves to being some kind of a fraud, or perhaps just not good enough, or people have those serious concerns that they don't want to do something and then be exposed as being a fraud, because that's kind of, by saying that, that's kind of how they're thinking of themselves. That if I put myself out in this atmosphere, in this maker world, and I pretend like I know what I'm doing, somebody's going to find out that I don't know what I'm doing. It's that kind of feeling. It's like they don't want to do it because of that. And Richard, you actually had an example. We were talking about this before, about how that can become a real hindrance. And it's obvious. Well, if that's not self-evident, then I don't know what is. But it can become a real hindrance to people putting their stuff out there and letting people know what they do and sharing their experiences.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've got loads of examples about me thinking that I'm going to get found out for having doubts and all the rest of it. But the one I think you're thinking of, the one I hope you're thinking of, should I say, I along with some other fellow makers across the country and Europe, were very lucky enough to be invited to a kind of get-togethery conferencey thing over in Northampton, and the invite there was lots of people there, but there were all these kind of big channel YouTubers there. So anyone from kind of my sort of level in the teens of thousands up to hundreds and hundreds of thousands, like nearing seven figures. And when you're sitting in a room, all talking about the same thing. I'm looking around like these people are good at what they do. Why am I here? What am I doing here? Because
I don't belong here.
I mean, when people are talking about some of the, I mean, everyone's open and candid about various things, and we were talking about using social media and legal sides and copyright issues and all the rest of it. One of them was revenue streams, and merchandise came up, and some of the figures that people were talking about that from these enormous channels, I was like, that's more in a month than I'm doing in nearly a year on paper, just in merch. I'm like, why am I here? I just felt like crawling back into the shadows. And it wasn't until I got back and Kat was saying, well, they do different things. You can't compare what someone else is doing to what you're doing. And suddenly you get this, you go from panic, rabbit in headlights, to like, I shouldn't have done. The self-doubt is like, I shouldn't be there. I can't go tomorrow. I won't do this. And then to actually you get over that, and then it becomes nicer, and it's a weird sort of cycle between doubt to not doubting to whatever, and then back again. And I'm gonna pass over to Kat now, because Kat, you did this a week ago, 2 weeks ago, when you were dyeing your yarn. Explain the yarn dyeing thing, because this is gold.
So I suffer with self-doubt a lot, like really a lot. I keep waiting for somebody to figure out that I don't actually know what I'm doing in most aspects of my life, actually. But so one of the things I do when I dye my own yarn and I sell it, for those that don't know, I sell it on Etsy and I sell it in my local yarn store. And one of the things I do is a monthly yarn subscription club. So people sign up for it, they get a colorway which is a complete surprise to them, something seasonal usually, but whatever I decide, and they get a little gift, and it's all it's a nice package thing that they get every month. And I never quite know what it's going to come out like until the day that I dye it. Sometimes I have an idea, sometimes I'm making it up as I go along and totally winging it. But the last month I was dyeing, Richard was in his workshop, I was in my studio right next door. I'm dyeing away and I'm chuntering to myself, I don't like this. It's not coming out how I want. I don't like it. I'm disappointed. I'm going to have to start again. All this yarn's going to be wasted. And he's in there, he's next door, sort of basically staying out of my way. And then I thought, before I chuck it all in the corner and have a little strop, I'll try something different. And I mixed some more colour and I tried something different. And before I knew it, I'm dancing around the studio going, I bloody love this. And now I want to dye some more because I want some of this. I need to knit something in this colour. And it turned around completely. So fortunately for me, I was having a good day and I didn't just chuck it in the corner and give up. I stuck with it. But yeah, so that's a happy ending to a self-doubt story. But for me, more often than not, I end up thinking it's not good enough, and that's why
got to love a happy ending.
And Kat, let me ask you a question though, because we all think our work is not good enough. Everybody who makes anything will always be the first one to point out the fault in what we've made. And the point, honestly, is if you make it and you go, oh gosh, that isn't good. That isn't good. That I could have done that better. Then you go down the list, because I do it on a ton of projects that I do, and then you just bring somebody new, like your wife, your better half, your brother, your sister, and they go, here, look what I made, and they look at it and go, wow, that's freaking amazing. They don't see the things that you see. So I'm asking, what I'm wondering is, as a crafter, somebody who does something and you go, really don't like this, but if you put it out to people and looked at them, do you really think that they would see what you see?
Yeah, because what you've got to remember is I'm selling to other crafters. So when I'm selling my hand-dyed yarn, it's other crafters that are buying it, other knitters or crocheters, and they've got just as high standards as I have.
So you are basically, you sell to the craftspeople.
Yeah.
But if you were to sell to let's put it this way, if you were to put a video out on you doing this and what it ended up turning on, do you think anybody would ever see what you see? Or do you think that, I'm just trying to get the inhibition, because there's obviously a inhibition here that you're afraid to put things out for people to see that may not be up to your standards. I understand that, because nothing I ever made in my entire life is up to my standards, and that's just kind of the goal we each. That's like the driving force we each have in order to become a better maker. It's got to be there in order to inspire us. So I don't, but it can be a hindrance, and I just don't think that's.
You were saying about getting found out that actually you don't know what you're doing. Like when I took my hand-dyed yarn to Yandles the other week for their craft show, it was the first time I'd ever done anything like that, and I was only able to do it because I wasn't exhibiting next to a load of other yarn dyers. If it had been a room full of other indie yarn dyers doing the same thing as I was doing, someone would have realised that I really don't know what I'm doing and I don't belong there.
But then actually they wouldn't, because it is, it is with the standard, isn't it? It's not.
So I'm going to come at this from a scroller's angle now, right? Now think of it as putting on think of it as putting on a scroll saw pattern, drilling your holes, cutting it out, right? Now if you're going around the pattern, you've drilled your hole, you've put your blade through, you start cutting, and you go off the line, right? You carry on doing it, right? Now let's say, for argument's sake, that queen picture I've done, or even the tiger, right? I've drilled all them holes, and I've gone off hundreds and hundreds of times, right? And you can still see, you can still see pictures. You can still see that line of the pattern all over it on the queen, the Bobby Duke picture, every single one that I've ever done. But as soon as that pattern is wiped away or sanded away or taken off, you're the only one that knows where you ever went off.
Yeah.
And look,
what a lot of people don't realise, Jamie, is that tiger started out as meant to be an elephant.
That's a zebra. But the thing is scrollers have seen that. Non-scrollers have seen that. They don't know.
Yeah.
Now there was that one that I'd done at Kempton Park of that racehorse. Right now, probably Charles Deering would know because he was the one that designed the picture. But if I was to show you that picture and not tell you where I went wrong, you would never know.
Right.
Yeah. No, you're right.
It's going to be very subjective to the specifics of what it is. I was scroll sawing, yarn making. I mean, for example, if you tangled up one of your big long loops of yarn and it snapped and you tied it back together, that would be noticeable to the person knitting with it.
Yeah.
You'd probably be able to get around it because you changed the things of yarn.
Yeah.
What are they called?
Skein.
The skein. So you'd have to join two skeins, so you could work around that. But they'd know. The finished article is what we were saying. Nobody cares between the starting materials and the finished item. No one's ever going to know. Same with the scroll saw pan. But if you then say had a piece of that the queen's nose broke off, for example, and you had to glue it back on again, that would be more noticeable. So it's all. I think it's very subjective with what the project is. But that kind of goes back to we all have those moments. We've all done that thing like, I've got to get this right. If I don't get this right, the whole thing could be ruined.
Yeah.
But that goes back to everyone always says, nobody that ever made anything never made a mistake. And anyone that makes things knows that probably their greatest skill in whatever it is they make is how to fix it. I mean, you're always sitting there pulling back rows of yarn.
Design feature. Yeah. It's not a mistake, it's a design feature.
But that's always the greatest fear when making too, is because if you get 80% to 90% through with a piece and you're looking at it and you happen to personally think this is nice, that last 10% you have to do, that's the pucker your rear end moment, because if you screw this up, then the entire thing is lost. That's scary. I mean, I've been there, I've done that, and I've just gone, oh my God. And normally that last 10% where if like Jamie's doing the queen. If he doesn't do the nose and just forgets about it, then that's a real problem. But if that's the last thing he has to do, and it's almost done, and I'm almost there, then there's that anxiety of, well, I better not screw this up, because if I do, the queen is going to be bozo. It's not a good call.
I don't know if other people in the chat have experienced this. I can't be the only one that finds this, but my projects follow a very definite pattern, which starts with, oh, this is going to be awesome. This is going to be so cute and so much fun to do. And then like the next stage is, this is a bit tricky. And then the next stage is, this is rubbish. I'm rubbish. Everything's rubbish. Throw it all in the corner. And then usually the next stage, there might be a bit of a gap before the next stage, but then the next stage is, it might be okay.
I can fix it.
And then the final stage will be, okay, that's all right. I'm happy with that. And that's with every project I do.
Absolutely.
But it's getting over that hump in the middle of, this is rubbish, everything's rubbish, forget it.
There's been an interesting comment actually in the chat from Rasmuth. He's saying that he actually fears the day when he loses that kind of inner critic side of himself, because to him it means that he's no longer able to distinguish between the good and bad, which I totally get. But in the same, I think that is an extreme of that judgment, because for me the medium is, it's the classic Berkey comment, progress not perfection, and
we've both had to say to one another, good enough is good enough.
Yeah, I mean, like that sort of doubt in yourself. I've had jobs where somebody said, "Oh, I want you to come in," and the classic one is, "Can you refinish this bit of furniture?"
Right.
It's worn. It might be, I don't know, the arms of a chair that have worn more than anything else, or something. And you're like, "Yeah, I can do that." It's not something I normally do. I wouldn't consider myself really good at that. I do it for myself. I think I can do a good job. I think I can do a good job. It'll take me a little bit longer, but I think I'm confident enough to take the job on. And then the reply is, "Oh, we've got absolute faith in you. We know you'll do a cracking job." And you're like, "Well, hang on a minute. We need to sort of just manage your expectations a little bit." And literally that happened, a fortnight ago with those little cupboards. I had a whole load of primary school cupboards from the sort of 60s or 70s. And they were mostly solid beech. It was all solid wood with a little bit of really thick veneers. And it basically, this set of 12 cupboards that were probably about a foot cubed-ish, roughly. It had been sat in the sun. It had never been refinished. It was like the bare wood. It was cracked. It had like big cracks in the material. It was twisted, and some of the joints had broken. It was a real tatty state. And it was all sort of dismantled and then sanded, and then I started putting finish on it. And it took a good week and a half between things. It was taking up loads of space, and I was starting to get stressed with it. And it literally got to the point I was like, right, I've got 2 coats of finish on it. That is done.
Good enough.
It looks okay. And I literally was looking at it thinking, that looks okay. It kind of looks good enough. And then you came home from work and were like, wow, that is not the same bit of furniture. And you just kind of lose the
inhibition.
No, I wasn't going to say inhibition. You lose kind of what's the word I'm looking? Perspective.
Because you've been close to it, and I hadn't been seeing it at every stage. I only saw the before and the after. You were too close to it.
All those little changes, and I think that goes back to what Rasmus was saying. That yes, but it sort of needs to be tempered, because you can lose that even when you're
pull yourself away from it a bit.
When you are deeply critical, you can have like the opposite effect.
That's really hard to do, to change your perspective, especially if you're the one that's doing it. That is not an easy thing to do, to walk away and come back with, well, I'm going to come back and look at this with a fresh look, knowing that you've spent the last week and a half working on that. That's not, you actually need Kat or somebody like that in order to absolutely do that, because it's just almost impossible to do for yourself.
That's kind of a good segue to a question, or not a question, a comment that Anna B made in the chat. She said, "I think it's hard to take any compliments about your work because of what you actually think." She says, "What the hell are they talking about? That's nothing special."
Well, a lot of people a lot of people we forget the outside world, because if we're constantly set on impressing our friends within the community, then I guess I could understand that feeling. But if you got to understand, there's more people, like a gazillion times more people outside of this maker community that are going to view that and think it's absolutely fabulous. And so you've got to take, I mean, who do you aspire to please besides yourself? I mean, please yourself. If you're happy, then be happy. If you're not happy, then you know what? Do it again, until you are happy. And, I can tell you that I have made so many things in my life, and there's absolutely not one of them that I can point to and go, I was happy with that. 100%. There are some that I can get to 95, 90, but I've never been 100% happy with something I've ever done. Wow. Because we are our own worst critics. We really are.
I think probably because there's sort of a bit of a follow-on from the sort of the perspective side of it. I think everyone needs a naughty corner.
Yeah,
I know I do. You're always putting things on.
If it goes wrong, there's no point trying to fix it when I'm cross with it. It goes back in the naughty corner until I'm no longer cross with it, and it's had a chance to think about how badly behaved it is, and I might pick it up tomorrow and try and fix the mistake. I've
been doing that for over 3 months now. I started a project, and I was gung-ho about doing it, and then it's not that it has gone bad. It's just I got really turned off of it. I just don't like it. And so but I'm stubborn. I'm like Jamie. I'm stubborn, and I refuse to move on until I finish this thing. And so that's why you haven't seen me do anything for quite some time, because it's just, I lost the ambition to do this, and I'm just refusing to move on until I finish it. And that's my own problem, I guess. But I mean, I've been there. And I've done that, and I'm going through it right now. But I've done that in the past. I remember doing that with my son's bed, because I made my son a bed, and I wasn't happy with where it was going, and I lost kind of the inspiration for doing it. And it sat in my shop for 6 months, and I didn't do anything in between those 6 months except sit there and ponder and pout about how I don't like it. And then I moved on with it. It's like I just got to get over myself in order to finish this friggin' thing. It wasn't that hard of a build, but man, whatever. Anyway, we put our own problems in. We're our own worst problem. We are, and I know.
Joe's asked a really good question, which I was sort of going to touch on after the being too close to it and keeping perspective and all the rest of it. But he says, do you think we need to have some sort of failure to keep us motivated? If everything was 100% successful, would you have the drive to do more? I don't know about you guys, but to me, it's kind of a statistical thing that is a bit scary, because you take on another job like those cupboards, and there actually is one coming in from the same punter. Oh, you've done a cracking job sorting out these cupboards. I've got this enormous 1970s sideboard that's been sat in a garage for 2 years, getting damp and dusty, and can you bring that back to life? And I'm like, I managed to do it once with a bit of furniture. Now I've got to do it a second time with a bit of furniture. At some point, I'm going to get a bit of furniture in that they're going to ask to be refinished, and it's not going to happen. Do you know what I mean? So it becomes more scary, not less scary. Does that make sense?
Yeah. You have to challenge yourself, don't you, and keep pushing yourself. Otherwise, you just get bored. Yeah,
and that's where the motivation comes in. But I don't think that necessarily means failure to keep motivated. It could be just like pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
Do you find that? I mean, was that failure like demotivating or more motivating for you, Chris?
Well, I haven't failed on it yet. I've just lost inspiration for doing it. But I have failed at things in the past. Obviously, Oh, I couldn't count how many times I've failed at doing something. And does it inspire me? You know what? It immediately makes me want to do. And so I guess I find it inspiring. I would have to answer that as I find it inspiring. Because the first thing I want to do when I fail at something is to do it again and do it correctly. It's like that bugs me that I didn't do that right. And so I'm immediately going to go back and try to do it correctly. And I remember an instance where I was trying to make and this was back when I was very young. I was trying to make a spice cabinet for somebody. And I did something incorrectly, and I kept doing it not the same way. I mean, at least I'm not stupid enough to do the same thing the same way and expect a different result. I mean, I was trying to do it in a number of different. I finally figured it out, I think after like the 4th or 5th time, and got it done. But it inspired me because I'm going, oh, no, I've seen this. I know it can be done. It's just my brain holding me back to figure it out. And I really wanted to get out there and figure out how to do this. And I got it done. So honestly, I would say failures are an inspiration more than they are a walk away for me. But it really depends on personality and what you're motivated to do. Because if you're not motivated to do it, then a failure is going to be an easy walk away. You know, if I don't really care if I do this or not. If you got that attitude, then you're going to walk away from it and never remember it. You know, it's like no big deal. But if you really want to do it and failure comes your way, then you're going to figure out a way to fix that and go about doing it correctly.
Do you think having those or not having the failures, should I say, do you think always having all the success potentially could mean that you walk away from it because you start getting bored? And I'm kind of, I think, got Jamie in mind here, because Jamie, obviously you talked about the going off the line with the scroll saw patterns and all the rest of it, and you are known for your portraits with your scroll sawing. But do you ever find yourself thinking, actually, I don't want to do another portrait because I want to cut something out? I know the compound cut's been a classic.
Yeah, a few times I've done that. Now, a couple of times when I've done, it was actually with the tiger the first time, actually. And while I was thinking about it, while I was doing that, there actually is somewhere on there where there was a big blowout on that tiger. Now, I know it kind of what area it's in, but I can't even find it now. And I did actually, that's one of the reasons why I didn't record it. Because there's actually a couple of reasons. One, it was the first time I'd ever used spiral blades properly. And the second reason is basically I had the ump with it because it blew out almost right at the start. So I was like, yeah, I'm not doing it, you know. So I kind of put it on the side for a little while, just like I did with the Queen, really. So yeah, it can kind of get to you. But scrolling aside, when you talk about fails to inspiration, it's kind of like, I mean, we've all got lathes. I'm sure there's a few people out in the chat that have got lathes as well. I mean, who's ever joined the funnel club? I have, countless times.
The funnel club?
The funnel club, where you go through the bottom of a bowl.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So, do you throw them bowl blanks away? No, you don't. You either plug them up or you turn them into something else.
And that goes back to what we all know how to do, which is not necessarily not make a mistake, but really learn how to cover up your mistake. If you make a mistake, then you learn very quickly how to recover from one. And if you've seen anybody who's recovered from mistakes and they make it look easy, then that is a person who has failed 1,000,000 times. This person has failed enough to know how to fix it. It's like Andy Pugh said out in the chat. You know, if you take the words and capitalize them, fail, F-A-I-L, that translates into first attempt in learning.
Yeah.
It is you're still learning. And so failure is not something to, I don't know, beat yourself up over. It's a matter of you just learned not to do that. So try it again. You know,
it's one of those things where it's not the end of the.
It's not.
Process. I mean, I'm always joking with Kat because if you make a mistake in your knitting, you can just pull it all apart and just carry on going. It's
Going on again.
It's like Lego. If you put Lego together wrong, you take the Lego apart and then put it together in the right order. It's
The
not
material's not wasted.
That's not always the way with woodworking. It is a lot of the time, like you said, Chris. There's ways around it, but sometimes it is that bit of wood is completely useless, and it's literally start again from scratch.
Well, then starts. Exactly.
But it might be just that, not necessarily the whole process is wasted. One dodgy joint in a table leg could be a new table leg. It doesn't necessarily mean the table's useless.
For a shorter table.
Sorry?
All right, guys.
For a shorter table.
I have to change the subject because we're getting on a little bit. But I did want to ask Kat about this because I saw her post on Facebook about it. So, Kat, tell us what you thought about the movie Joker.
No, I can't with that.
And she's laughing because she knows what I'm saying. But anyway, go ahead.
I don't want to spoil it for anybody.
Well, okay. All right. But you weren't overly impressed with it, is the impression I got.
Yeah. I just thought, and I think it's because there was so much hype and I was so excited to see it. And it didn't quite get there. I thought Joaquin Phoenix was absolutely astonishing. It was fantastic, but he's fantastic in everything I've ever seen him in. So I was expecting nothing less. But story-wise, I was a little bit disappointed.
You were left lacking. All right, and I only know this because I was messaging Richard, unbeknownst to me, that he was in the movies with you, and because I was trying to get some information out of him, and he goes, "I'm in the movies. You want to leave me the hell?" So it inspired me to text him several more times. Anyway, Jamie, let's turn it to you because we do have to wrap this thing up. And your yellow pages of the makers community is yet to be ignored, and so we won't do it this time either. So if you are ready, my friend.
I guess I am. So it's time for Jamie's page.
God help us.
So we've only got a couple of things this time. So firstly, we've got Claire's Crafty Corner has hit 8,000 subscribers on the tubes.
Wow!
Yay.
So well done to Claire. And Mr. Nick Zametti has just got 500,000 subscribers.
Right. Well, that's a milestone. Good for Nick.
Don't be patronising.
No, I'm not patronizing. I don't care. I mean,
Right. My shout outs. The first one, I've actually got two this time because I'm being greedy. The first one goes to Dave from Dave G Designs because one, he begged me for it. And two, he spent all weekend trolling me on my demo on Friday. And my second shout out goes to Dan from CDA Woodturning on Instagram. He's a hell of a nice guy, and he didn't troll me once, and he was very supportive. So there's a lesson here. You don't have to be an ass to get a shout out, Dave.
But apparently the ass got one anyway. So congratulations to both, I suppose.
Yeah.
I'll give mine real quick because I know Kat and Richard have theirs. Mine goes out to a video. It was actually just released today, and that's Sunday for those of you who are listening on Wednesday. Sebastian O'Leary. And I just love Sebastian. He's just a good dude. It's O'Leary's on YouTube if you're looking to find him, and you should look to find him. He just did a quick video on carving out a wooden cup, and Richard, you'll appreciate it because he sat there and drank tea out of it at the end.
Awesome.
So, but if you have a chance to check that video out, do so. If not, if that doesn't pique your interest, then at least just subscribe to O'Leary's channel because he has all kinds of awesome stuff, and he's a good guy. So there you go. Sebastian O'Leary's mine.
Well, I don't have a shout out this week because Jamie had two, and we don't want to drag it on all night. I don't know if you've got a shout out, but do you want to just remind people about the Maker Quilts?
Have we got time?
We can make time for that.
Oh, we're gonna make time.
Okay, well, I do have a shout out, but shall I talk about the quilt first?
Or you can talk about it afterwards. It's entirely up to you. It's your little segment. You take.
Oh my god. Okay, I do a shout out quickly because I wanted to just shout out my kids, Noodle Boy and Dirk's Works Mini Noodle, because Noodle Boy is going to be 18 tomorrow. So happy birthday for him. But he has chosen to spend his weekend celebrating his birthday by hiking Kinder Scout in the Peak District and climbing Snowdon. And he's done it to raise money for cystic fibrosis. So I'm really super proud of him. He dragged Little Noodle up Snowdon as well yesterday. So they've both done it. And I've asked Chris if he would include the link to the Just Giving, just in case anyone listening has got a spare quid or two, they could chuck in the pot for them.
Nice. It'll be there.
Works with a dude that lives with cystic fibrosis, and so it's a cause that they're sort of passionate about helping out.
That's awesome.
Takes Dirk's works and drags them kicking and screaming up a mountain on their own on someone else's birthday. That's got to be worth paying for. I mean, honestly,
exactly.
It's got to be worth paying.
I'm not sure Dirk enjoyed it particularly, but there you go.
Even better.
I'm kind of doubting Jake now.
Well,
Jake.
I'm not doubting.
Yeah, I'm doubting what Jake said about him.
Yeah, no, he genuinely, that was right. Right, so the quilt, the Maker Quilt. So I want to start by thanking those that have sent T-shirts in, which is the Woodshop, Carl and Robin, and also Dead Rise Woodcrafts. Have I said that right?
Yeah. Emmett, yeah.
Emmett, yeah.
Yeah. So thank you guys for sending in your T-shirts, but you are the only people that have done so. And so as it stands at the moment, it's kind of a little difficult to get the project off the ground because I just don't have enough T-shirts. So it was brought to my attention this week that actually there might be a lot of people that would like to support the project but don't have merchandise, don't have T-shirts, or would like to help out in some other way. So after a bit of discussion with Jamie, because it was Jamie's idea initially, and chatting it out with these guys, we've come up with an alternative project that we hope that you will want to get on board with and help out. So it's still going to be a quilt, but instead of being made out of Maker T-shirts, what we'd like to ask you to do is to come onto the website and sponsor a square of the quilt. And the squares will be available. You can donate as little as £1 or as much as you'd like. But for each £1 you donate towards this project, you will get an entry into a prize draw to win the finished quilt. So that's how we're going to try and do it now. So if you haven't got a T-shirt or you don't have the time to get one in the post to me, you can still get involved and support the project. And then what we're aiming to do is hopefully raise enough to sponsor a guide dog puppy, which was my choice of cause to support because I've worked in the world of optics all my life, and also I'm a big fan of Bamba the dog. So we wanted to try and support and sponsor a guide dog puppy through its training. So that's the idea. If you would like to get involved, come along, sponsor a square or more than one square if you wish. And then when the quilt is completed, it will be a prize draw for all those that have sponsored will be entered into the draw.
That's awesome. I think that's a great turn. I think that's a great turn to do with this, because initially you were going to do this and then hold an auction and sell it to the highest bidder. Whereas now, if people want to buy a square, they have a chance to win it.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, anybody who wants to do that, if you're interested in the quilt, then go for it. But I think it's more important that you just do this in the spirit of the charity itself. And Jamie, this all stemmed back from Chris Fisher, did it not? His guide dog, Bamba? Yeah,
Bamba.
Yeah.
Bamba's fantastic. And I should just also say a quick thank you to Darren at Cooper's workshop, because the sponsoring a square thing was actually his idea, not mine.
Oh, it's an awesome charity.
You so could have taken that.
I know.
Kind of going along the lines of the sponsoring the guide dog through its training. Dave G Designs, Jamie's shout out, has pointed out it's £57,000 to train a guide dog. That is what a guide dog effectively costs. You take a puppy, you put in all of that training and everything, 57 grand. That's probably won't get to something like that. But when you go to the Guide Dogs website, the UK Guide Dogs for the Blind website, there's various tiers that you can kind of sponsor for. That's so much a week or a bit here, and they kind of give these not milestones, but kind of reference points. So £10 pays for X and £15 pays for why, and
Right.
they literally are asking for £1 a week. You can sponsor a specific puppy through its, because it's a 2-year training session between they take a puppy and then release it to somebody who's partially or non-sighted.
Right. But you're gonna look. You're just looking to help them along with this.
Literally, even if only one, if the people listening, however many that is at the moment, spent £1, that would be however many pounds that helps go towards the dog food, the kennel fees, the immunisations, and the medical that these dogs have to go through.
The profession of training these dogs.
For somebody like Chris, Chris, we know of, most of us know him in person, but there's lots of non-sighted people out, like you said, in the optics industry that you're helping.
And Dave G asked, where do we send the t-shirts? Dave, that's not the avenue we're going to anymore, but the links to whatever you're going to be looking for are down below in the description. And I think that's a great avenue to go. That's a great idea, Kat.
Yeah, I just want to reply to Fred. I don't know if I'm going to try and get them in there for Wednesday. I'm going to try and get the auction set up, or not the auction, whatever we need set up by Wednesday. But if not, I'm going to get it done hopefully by next week's show.
Yeah.
So it will be there. If you guys are truly interested in supporting this, and I hope you are, then the links will be in the descriptions of, if not this Wednesday show, then Jamie next week's, right?
Yeah, hopefully, yeah.
You can sponsor as many squares as you'd like.
Yeah.
Now, you can count me in for 20 right now.
So far.
Yeah, I mean, I'll get 20 of them right now, and you guys better hurry up. And because if we start making a lot of money in this, Kat's got a lot of work to do, because these squares may end up being like this big. If you want to make a quilt out of those, Kat's like, oh God, don't tell me that. Anyway,
I have had some fabric donated to me, which I can use, so there won't be any expenses for the fabric or anything like that. Because initially, using the t-shirts, we weren't going to have to buy the fabric, but this way. Obviously, we're not using t-shirts now, but the fabric has been given to me, so I won't need to. There won't be any expenses for like that.
Bloody noodle squares, Richard.
Well, Kat, let me ask you. Let's just say I happen to donate £20 to this. That means I get 20 squares. Does that mean I have 20 chances to win it?
Yes.
Ooh.
Yeah.
You guys better open up your wallets, because I may get a quilt if you don't. All right, cool.
Each square you sponsor is one entry into the draw.
Awesome. All right, guys. I think that's fantastic. Richard, we can probably wrap this up, because I think we're already over a little bit. But
we always go over.
Yeah, we do.
But Joe's not here to moan about it, so hey.
Well, he was earlier. I saw him in the chat.
Excellent. Well, a massive thanks to Kat for bailing us out. A massive thanks to, no, not to Jamie, because you're supposed to be here. Unfortunately, Jamie's still got his 100% bragging rights. So we tried, but maybe someone could take him to a show and or lock him up for a Sunday or just somehow. Massive thank you to those people listening live in the chat. If you are still listening, if you're not, we will say what we like about you. I'm not quite sure whether we're doing the live free. We're not on Patreon, but you can stay for a kind of a bit of an after party after the party when it happens. If it happens, I really don't know. Chris, do we know what's happening next week? Because I certainly don't know that either.
I don't have a clue.
Maybe Jamie knows. It should be fun. Come back next week and find out what on earth we actually managed to pull out about. This week could actually leave you soon. Right, okay. Well, hopefully the listeners won't be. If you are, maybe we'll see
so am I.
After. Until whenever it is you hear from us again, thank you for listening, and we will see you or listen to you or talk to you next time. You have a great week.
Have a great week, everybody.
Bye.
See you later.